You Likutei Sichos in Chelek Lamed Gimel, volume 33. This is the second Sicha for the Parshas Korach. This is a very Lomdische, Yeshivische style Sicha in the laws of Shlichus that we learn from this Parsha that the Shaliach needs to be Dafke a Yid and a Ma'atem Brei Bris, but a non-Jew is not able to be a shaliach. And the Rebbe brings from the Gemara that there is an opinion that thinks that Rav Ashi thinks that it might be a shaliach. The Gemara says, no, this is not at all true. And the Rebbe goes into the various different levels of shlichus as known, whether you become like the sender, your actions are like the sender doing it. It's not at all just the action counts for the various different, as we'll see inside. And also, the Rebbe explained this in Avodas Hashem, and the Rebbe also explains that sometimes it is important to be a Metzias, so that you should be able to really fully do the things in the most successful way, but at the end, no, you have to be totally bittul. As the Rebbe will go through, we'll go step by step. Korach base, Aleph. So this is in the Pasuk when it talks about Truma, so it says, you shall separate the Truma. Do you have to be personally giving the truma, or can you send someone and say, give the truma for me? So we learn that a shaliach is okay, and then the Torah says you separate, but it says gam atem, also you. What is this also you? Meaning you, also you, meaning that there's somebody else over here that can do. That's a shaliach. But the Gemara learns because it says, Gam Atem, also you, that the Gam, the additional, the Shaliach must be Jewish, also a B'nai Bris, just like Atem. The Pasuk says like this, Kain Torimu Gam Atem Trumas Hashem. So you two shall separate, raise the Truma of Hashem. You two shall separate to give the Truma. So from this pasuk, Lamdu Chazal, our sages of blessed memory, learned from this pasuk, because it says Gam Atem, also you, so that the Gam, the additional, the also must be like you. Ma Atem B'nai Bris, just you are of the covenant, meaning Jewish people are part of the covenant with Hashem. Av shluchachem, also the shaliach, which we learn out from the gam also. The gam atem bol rabbis es hashaliach. The gam of atem, that's coming to include that ashliach also. You separate gam atem, also you. So who's the also? That comes to say that a shaliach, which is not just you, but also you. But it says Gam Atem. So the limud, where we learn that a shaliach can be made, that it needs to be a bnei bris. So from here, it has to be somebody of the covenant, it has to be Jewish. She'ein shlichus l'nochri. There is no agency, there is no, a shaliach cannot be given to a nochri. A nochri, a non-Jew, cannot be a shaliach. That's in the Gemara, as we learn it out in the Gemara in Kiddushin. So then in the Gemara over there, we find in the Gemara B'Metziah, there is a discussion, a give and take in this, the fine of this halacha about a goy not being a shliach, needing davke b'nei bris, whether it applies b'chol ha'torah kula, wherever we use a shaliach, or it only applies in the case of truma, which we have the beferish pasuk. Rav Ashi Omar, Rav Ashi says, Ki amrinon ein shlichus lenochri. When do we say there is no agency, there's no shlichus to a nochri, to non-Jew, is hani mili betruma. This is only by truma. The pasuk says, gam atem, the pasuk says, by truma. Over there it's talking came torimu gam atem, so it's only by truma. Ki amrinon ein shlichus lenochri. When do we say there is no agency, shlichus to a nochri? Hanimili betruma. That is only said about truma. Avo b'chol ha'Torah kulo. But in the whole entire Torah, in all other matters of the Torah, yes, shlichus lenochri. There is a shlichus for a non-Jew. That's the opinion of Rav Ashi. The Gemara at all doesn't like this, his opinion. And the Gemara says, V'hod Rav Ashi berusa. It's a girsa, berusa, basically it means it's a non-starter. It's not true. And the Gemara explains why this cannot be true. It's not like there's another source for shlichus in the first place. The entire source of shlichus comes from the pasuk of Gam Atem, which is the pasuk by Teruma. So how could there be shlichus elsewhere different if it doesn't qualify Anochri as a shliach by Truma? The entire laws of shlichus we learn from Truma. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara said, Rav Ashi berusi, Maish not Truma deloi. Why would Truma be different? They would say, no, you can't have Anochri. Diksiv Atem, Gam Atem. It says Atem Gam Atem, meaning that the Gam should be like the Atem. Ma'atem b'nei bris, av shluchachem nami b'nei bris. Just like you are of the covenant, also the agents must be of the covenant. Cannot be a shliach, somebody who's not like Atem. So shlichus d'chol ha'Torah kulo nami metruma gamrin lo. So the shlichus of the entire Torah, where do we know she shluchus kamoisa? Where do we know that b'chlal you can make a shliach? That a shliach does something for you, it counts for you. How do we know that a shliach is kamoisa? As Rashi says, shliach kamoisa from Rashi, mitruma gamrin lo. So this is learned from truma. A shliach, as Rashi says in Kiddushin, the Gemara brings down that shlichus. This Rashi is in Baba Metzia, but Rashi says in the Gemara in Kiddushin, as we first brought down at the beginning of the Sikha, from the Gemara of Kiddushin, how do we know that there is shlichus? We learn from Truma in the Gemara Kiddushin that everywhere there is a shliach helps. So since we learn it all out from the din of Truma, that you can make a shliach, so we know for everywhere else. So, what is the argument over here? So, bepashtus mashma, simply, it appears the time shel Rav Ashi. What's Rav Ashi's reasoning? That he says that b'chol ha'Torah it's okay. So it's like the din ein shlichus lenochli hurak betruma v'lev b'chol ha'Torah kulahu. Why does Rav Ashi say that it's only by truma and not in all of Torah? Mibnei shesvirelei shaloi gamrina shlichus kol ha'Torah kula mitruma. He sort of thinks that we don't learn shlichus from truma, and therefore by truma we can have the din that ein shlichus lenochli. But it doesn't apply elsewhere because elsewhere we have another limud that we know that there is a shalichus. That's why the Gemara is saying, no, there is no other pasuk. So it comes out, what's the machlokes between Rav Ashi and the halacha is that according to Rav Ashi, we can separate because there is ein shlichus le nachri by truma, but the other halachas we learn else from somewhere else. And the Gemara says, no, there is no other pasuk, and therefore everything learns from truma. And since by truma there is no shlichus le nachri, there is no shlichus anywhere because everywhere we learn from truma. But the Rebbe says, this is difficult to say Sha'aplukta kanhi, that this is the machlokes im gamrina shlichus kol haTorah kula mitruma, whether we learn all of the shlichus from truma, and that Rav Ashi holds that we don't learn it from truma, and that's what the disagreement. That's difficult because we don't have any other sources for it. So the Rebbe says v'yoser mistaber loymar. It's more logical to say that shehachiluk ben Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Ashi umaskonos haGemara ubisvara, that here the issue is a logical. It's a logical issue. In other words, everybody agrees that there's only one source for shlichus. The source of shlichus comes from truma. The issue becomes a logical disagreement. Rav Ashi svirale, Rav Ashi holds the din zeh ma'atem b'nei bris. This halacha that we learn, gam atem, that you need to be also a b'nei bris, hu gzeiras hakosu. This is the Torah decreed this. Kimitzad asvara, because on your own, without the pasuk, hayunu oimrim shegam nochri yochel li shliach li Yisrael. On your own, you would say that a nochri could be a shliach for a yid. The Torah disqualifies it. V'lochein ein loch boy elo chidusha, and therefore, Torah says you can make a shliach, and therefore we can only say where the Torah said this. V'rag b'truma amrinan hachi v'loy b'chol haTorah kula. And therefore, only by truma we would say that a nochri should become no. So therefore, always b'chol haTorah kula, a nochri should be a shaliach. There's no reason for a nochri not to be a shaliach, but Torah disqualifies it. Torah says gam atem. So we always do the minimum. We say the chiddush is the Torah says there can be a shliach. Where did the Torah say it can be a shliach? By truma. So therefore, so therefore, everywhere else there's no reason to disqualify a nochri from shlichus. So we're going to say the Torah only disqualified him over here, and that's why Rav Ashi holds. Yes, we learn shlichus from truma, but logically we have no reason for a goy not to be a shliach. But here the Torah says gam atem, so it's only going to apply by truma. But everywhere else, logically, he could be. As opposed to the conclusion of the Gemara, this is logical that he cannot be a shaliach. This makes sense that the shaliach needs to be similar to Mishaleach. And Nochri cannot be a shaliach because he's not similar. This is a logical conclusion. V'hainu, and that is the ma shekosu gabe truma gam atem, when the Torah writes gam atem and disqualifies anochri, is a logical thing. Uragili milsa. The pasuk here is revealing to us that which makes sense. It makes sense, so it applies everywhere. Shegeder hashlichus michayiv shashliach yiyeh doimel hamishaleach. The definition shlichus makes it necessary that the agent needs to be similar to the sender. The shliach needs to be similar to shaliach. V'lachein ein din shlichus lenochri gam b'chol haTorah kula. There's no shlichus to a non-Jew in all of Torah because it doesn't make sense to have a shaliach who is not similar to the mishaleach. So the chilek between Rav Ashi and the maskona is, according to Rav Ashi, it makes sense for a nochri to be a shaliach. We don't need the agent to be similar to the mishalech, according to Rav Ashi's understanding. And therefore, when the Torah clearly says gam atem that a nochri not, we're only going to use this for truma, where the Torah clearly states that gam atem, that he has to be b'nei bris. But according to the conclusion of the Gemara, that's not the case. A nochri, by definition, is, since he's not similar to the mishaleach, he should not qualify as a shliach altogether. So when the Torah told us, revealed to us that ma'atem b'nei bris gam atem, also the shaliach, okay, that's a revelation which makes sense, and therefore we're going to apply it everywhere. Basically, if it's logical, it applies everywhere. If it's illogical, it only applies to Truma. According to Rav Ashi, it's illogical to not allow a goy to be a shaliach, so we only apply it where the Torah said it, and everywhere else, Rav Ashi holds a goy can become a shaliach, a noch can become a shaliach. According to the Rabbanon, it's actually logical for a goy not to be a shaliach, and therefore we're going to apply it everywhere. That's how the Rebbe explains this machloikis in Rav Ashi, rather than saying, and this is going to be negeya to this whole discussion that the Rebbe is going to bring out. Why is it that a shaliach needs to be similar to the mishalech, or doesn't have to be similar to the mishalech? And also, as the Rebbe will interpret it in Avodas Hashem, that a yid, as a shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how much of similar to Hashem, how much must you listen to Hashem in order to be a fully a shliach, as the Rebbe will continue to develop it as we go on. Oispace. So now the Rebbe is going to say this, the Rebbe is going to introduce the whole idea of the three different levels of shalichus, and why Rav Ashi would think that it's okay for a nochri to be a shaliach. Because it depends really what a shaliach is, how we look as a shaliach who does something for someone else. If it's only that the Torah says somebody else does something, the action that he does counts for another person, why should a goy not, a nochri not be able, his actions is being done? If a shaliach means that he takes the place of the mishaleach, the agent becomes like the mishaleach, you have to be part of it in order to take his place, or your ma'aseh. That let's go through the three different categories. Why what a shaliach does helps for the mishaleach. Base. Venira, and it seems, the Rebbe says, it seems the pligi be'etzem geder hashlichus. They disagree in the essence. What is the definition of shlichus? What does it mean when we're saying you send an agent? How does the agent work that it helps for the one who sent it. By first introducing the very well-known question, investigation in this din, the inyan, the chakira, the shluchas lodum k'moiseh. When we say by a shliach that the shliach of the person is like the person. Sheyesh levadei bekama yifanim. We can explain this in many ways. There are three ways how to explain it. The highest level that we're saying the shliach is like the mashalech, aleph, is k'moiseh mamish. He is like him. So when Reuven sends Shimon, Shimon becomes Reuven. Shliach shalodom k'moiseh, Shliach becomes Reuven. Whatever, everything, it's Reuven. Shimon is no longer Shimon now. Shimon is Reuven because he sent him. Benegeya le'oisei hamaisa. So that is the one who does the action. Shimon, who's going to do it. Shimon, is Reuven now. He's like Reuven. Shaguf hashaliach ukeguf hamishaleach. The body of the shaliach is like the body of the mishaleach. One who's doing, of course, for this shlichus that he gave him, he became Shimon became Reuven. He's doing it in the place of Reuven, so he's like Reuven doing it. Ubederech memela. So since you are Reuven, misyacheses asiyas hashliach lemshaleach. So therefore, when you're doing it, it applies to the sender because he's doing it. You are his shliach. You became like Reuven, and therefore Shimon became like Reuven, and therefore it's even though Shimon is doing, but it's Reuven doing it because Shimon now is Reuven. So for this act, for which is a shliach, he is Reuven doing it, and therefore what is being done relates to Reuven because Shimon is Reuven now for the shlichus. That would be the highest level. The second level is no, Shimon does not become Reuven, but the act that he does, base, kamoisei, rag b'shayches lekoyach ha'asiyah dehashliach oila ha'maisa. It is only as it pertains that action that you do. Shimon is Shimon, but the shliach means that when Shimon does the act, what he does for him, his act, the power of doing, or the act that he's doing, this is counted as if Reuven did it. It's not that he turned into Reuven fully, but it's only the act becomes Reuven's act, even though Shimon is doing it. Ashlichus means that the doing of the shaliach is just like the mishaleach doing. Gimel, number 3. The lowest level kimoisoi, it's like the shaliach hurak benegeya letetzoes hamaisa. It's only as it applies to the action, the results of the action, which means it's not Reuven doing it, it's Shimon doing it. The results, Shimon can do something, but a shaliach means that what he does, it goes on the account of Reuven. So the result, Shimon does it. The Torah says that you do something for somebody else. What you have done, you're somebody else. Your act is somebody else. Somebody else. But the Torah says that counts for Reuven. But to use another language, is to the object in which the action was done. So that the object in what the thing was done is counted for the other person, is counted for the Mishalech. Shegam asiyose shaliach einodem Mashaleach. Even the act of not only the body of the Mishalech, of the agent, but also not only the body of the shliach isn't the Mishalech, even the act of doing is not the Mishalech. Einodem Mashaleach. Elosha siyas hashliach ba'chefza. But the fact that the shaliach doing in the object what he accomplishes, that impacts, that accomplishes the same thing that the doing of the sender would have accomplished. So it accomplishes the same thing. So it doesn't matter. So you sent a shaliach to divorce your wife. So the shaliach who is giving, it's the shaliach giving the divorce, not the mishaleach, according to the third way. But the action of his giving the divorce to the other man, to Reuben's wife, is considered and accomplishes it as if Reuben would have given it, even though it's Shimon that gave it, so that the result of his action is impacts as if Reuben would be the one giving it, even though Shimon gave it. That's the shliach. So, if it's only necessary, this third level of shalichas, we can understand Rav Ashi, because it's only about the act. An act, it's you don't have to become on any level like the Mishaleach in the sense that you need to be compared to him. You're not the Mishaleach, the goof of the Mishaleach. You're not the action of the Mishaleach. It's just that your act counts. So why should a Nochri not be also? That would be the logic of Rav Ashi. So based on this, we can say the Das Rav Ashi Rav Ashi's opinion is like this third way that your act, the act of the shaliach, helps for the mishaleach. Now, shegam ma'isa shlichus eino misyachas le'hamashaleach elo lahashliach. The act of the shlichus does not relate to the sender. It's not the sender. It's the shliach doing it. Umikivon she'ein hashliach oimed b'mokem ha'mashaleach. And since the shaliach is not in the place of the Mishalech, he's not in his place. Shimon, or the Shaliach, whoever the Shaliach is not becoming Reuben. Not himself, and not even his act is not Reuben's act. It's the Shaliach's act. He's not really in the place of the Mishalech. We don't even need that the Shaliach's doing is like Reuben is doing it. Like the Mishaleach, he's not, he doesn't have to be, he doesn't become at all. It's the Shaliach doing it till the end. L'chein, and therefore holds Rav Ashi. Im hu rak ben Adam hashayich la'asiyah zu yochel shaliach. So he holds, if he's only a human being who has a connection to this doing, he can become a shaliach. It's just a matter of action. The one who asks him, and he ties him to this act because he needs this done, and he asks you to do it. So you don't have to become him at all. You don't have to compare him. You just got to do it. And he says, the al derech, for example, to demonstrate this, he ties you with the rope, and you don't oppose it. So he asks you to do something for him. He's tying you. Tying you a rope doesn't need, it's external. It's just, I tied you to something. I asked you to do something, so I'm tying you to this action. You don't need to become anything like the sender. You're just tied to it. I tied you by asking you, and you agreeing to it. So why shouldn't a human being, even if he's a nokri, be able to do an action? And that the connection to the sender is through he tied you to, you're committed to it. That's what Rav Ashi holds, that in all of Torah there is an agency, a nokri can become a shaliach. The im hashlichus he beinyan kozeh shegam hanochri shayich la'asiyosei. If the mission over here is in such a matter that the nochri has a connection to it, which means when there's sometimes there's just a matter of action that you need to do for me, an act. There's sometimes, like we say, Gitin and Kedushin, the Rebbe points the horror. That's what he means here, that you need to be betoides, Gitin and Kedushin. You cannot do even an act if you don't have a shaykhis to it, because these are laws which are specially for Yidden. But if it's something that it's doing, and it's an act which a human being, which a Nochri has a connection to it, Hare hu yochel li shliach li Yisrael, he's able to be a shliach for a Yid. Omnom maskonas haGemara, but what does the Gemara conclude? This is Rav Ashi's svara, that it's like the third level of shlichus. But the Gemara says the hod that Rav Ashi berusahi, the Rav Ashi's opinion is berusahi is a non-svara, not acceptable at all. Sheshita zuma farechas. This view is rejected totally. V'hechrech shashliach yiyeh doime la'mishaleach. Shliach needs to be compared. It needs to be somehow similar to the Mishalech. Ma'atem chulav shluchachem, that he needs to be like the Shaliach. That means, even according to the third way, Hainu, even if we say that it's only your act counts for the Mishalech, not that you become like the Mishalech. Hainu shegam im timtzo loymar. Even if you're going to find to say that it's like the third way, your act counts for the Mishaleach, that the doing is the Shliach doing, it's not the Mishaleach doing it, but it's the Shliach doing it, but it only counts for the Mishaleach. Inyan hashlichus. The shlichus cannot be explained, is not possible, cannot be possible, only if you are k'moised ha'mishaleach. And this goes in all different ways how we explain shlichus. You still have to be like the mishaleach. You have to be k'moised ha'mishaleach, even if we explain it that it's only the act of the shliach that counts from you. That shliach still has to be k'moised. Hasbara. What's the explanation? Why? Why is this the conclusion of the Gemara? Why is Rav Ashi beruso? So the Rebbe explained this. B'shlichus yesh shnei inyonim. There's two aspects in shlichus. Aleph, kiyum hashlichus bepoyel. The fulfillment of the shlichus to do what he were sent to do. So whatever you were sent to do, when you do it, that's one aspect. But the other aspect is chalois shem shliach, that the name shliach should rest on you. You need to be not what you can do, not what you accomplish, but you need to have the name of the shaliach rest upon you. Kol shloishes ha'aifanim hanal begeder hashlichus. All the three different ways that we mentioned before, defined in the definition of shlichus, heimrak benegeya lekiyum hashlichus bepoyel. That's only as it pertains to fulfillment of the shlichus. So when you've done it, how is it counted for him? Is it your action? Is the action counted like he does it? It counts for him. Does he become? This is how you accomplish bepoyel what he has. Kasher donim, when we deal with eich moyel maisi ishza shliach avrish acharam shalech, when you try to figure out how does the act of this person who is a shaliach help for another person who sent him? What's the relation? How does it help? That we have the three different explanations. Then it's possible to give the reason there's three ways. Is it because the Torah has given us the novel idea b'shlichus shemaisa shaliach moil kimaisa mishalech, that the act of the shaliach helps just like the act of the mishalech. So the Torah says he does it, but it helps for the other person. Or the reason is shas yosizu nechsheves, or that doing it so is considered pasiyas hamishleich, is it mashleich does it, or is it because the Torah connects them, or his doing is connected? Oy yisayim hazeh, or more than that, sheguf hashliach nefshach teguf hamishaleach, or even more, that it says that the shliach, the body, the whole shliach is like the mishalech, ubemela maseyu k'maisa mishalech, and therefore what he does is like the sender, the mishalech does it. Those are all different ways how to explain why the act, what the shaliach does, helps for the mishalech. Does it help just because the Torah sort of makes this connection? The other one does it, but it helps for another person. Or when he does it, is considered the act like the mishalech is doing it, or he becomes like the mishalech, all of him like the mishalech, and that's why it counts for the sender. Aval koidem l'chein tzorich liyis chalois shel shlichus al hashliach. But before you can start, you need to have him being a shliach, not why he does. He needs to rest upon him the title that you give him. He is an agent. Hainu haminui hapoil chalois shem hashliach. The appointment which makes up that he can be a shaliach. Not why the shliach helps for him, but how do you become a shliach? How does the appointment, who can become a shliach? In order that the name shliach should be able to rest, so the chliyas kesher ben hashliach v'hamishaliach. There needs to be a tie, a connection between the shliach and the mishalech. How are you going to become a shliach? Now how it's going to happen, the act. But how do you become a shliach? There needs to be some connection between the two for him to become a shliach. Ki efshel li is shlucha shel mishalech, because it's impossible to be a agent of the sender be'ezoi for sure on any level, mibli sheyiyah kemoisei da mishalech, without being like the mishalech. Shetzorich liyis hashliach misyaches be'erech mala mishalech. The shliach needs to have some sort of a relationship, some of similarity to the sender. B'lochein, and because of this, ein shlichus lenochri b'chol ha'torah kulo. There is no shlich nochri. Why? Because he cannot be like the Mishaleach, like the Yid. He can't become a shlich in the first place. And there is no relationship between the Yid and the Nochri beforehand for him to become a Shaliach. Not for the action. The mice of the Nochri may be able to help for the Mishaleach, but he can't be a Shaliach. Cannot be like the Yisrael. So the Rebbe concluded the two aspects the Rebbe explained in the Ois Beis, that Rabbi Ashi, in the three levels of Shlichus, Rabbi Ashi holds that you don't have to become, the reason your action helps for the sender, you don't have to become like the sender in any form, just the doing. A Nochri can do it also, so he thinks it's good. But the Rebbe is mechadish. No, in addition to why it helps for the sender, you have to become a shliach in the first place. In order to become a shliach in the first place, you need to be somewhat in the category. A nochri is not in the category of the mishaleach. Can be a shliach in any of the three ways you explain it. So it can't be, there's no chalois named shliach in the first place. And this way the Rebbe explains another halacha in the Gemara that Rabbi Lezer says. Rav Ashi says, Gimel, Hanal b'divrei Rav Ashi, yesh levayer oid maimer shel Rav Ashi b'inyan hashlichus. Can explain another statement of Rav Ashi in Shlichus, shematzinu gam kishenivach lahalacha. We also find that statement that Rav Ashi stated was also challenged and rejected in halacha. And that's in Bedin Shliach Oisha Shliach. That's in the halacha that you send one agent, so that agent can go ahead and make another agent. So he sent you to do the thing, and then you make somebody else. So over there we say sheyochel lasis kamo shaluchim afilu meya. You can make even 100 shluchim, one after the other. So Rav Ashi will say, the Shvila Rav Ashi, she'im meis shliach rishon. So what happens? He sends, Reuven sent Shimon, and then Shimon sent Levi. Levi sent further, and then after Shimon sent Levi, Shimon died. The shliach, the first shliach died. Reuven is still alive. Is Levi Shimon's shliach because he made him, and therefore, if Shimon died, there's no more. Or Shimon made Levi Reuven's shliach. Shimon died, but Reuven is alive. So he says like this: Rav Ashi holds she'im meis shliach rishon. If the first shliach, say Shimon, who was sent by Reuven, if he dies, he says, Batul Kulam. They're all Batul. There's no more shlichus. You can't go ahead and the other shliach, the 5th to 10th shliach, give the get to his wife. He's not a shliach anymore. Why? Because Shimon, the first shliach, he died. That's what Rav Ashi's opinion. Omar Mar bar Rav Ashi. So Mar, the son of Rav Ashi, he disagreed with his father. And he says, when my father said this, it was when he was a minor. When he was a child, he was young. In other words, he disagrees with his father. He said it in his childhood, as Rashi says, this halacha, because you can challenge that. It's not a right halacha. It says like this: Ilu meis bal. Had the husband died, the husband who's sending the get, midi mashosha isbahu, would there be any value in the shluchim and in sending it to get to his wife if he's no longer around? What he's trying to demonstrate, they're all shluchim of the Baal. They're not shluchim of the Shaliach. They're not Shimon's shluchim. They're Reuven's shluchim, the Baal Shaliach. So if the husband died, midi mashosha izbuhu, is there any value in this shlicha? Kulu mikoyach man ka'osu. Who are they all coming from? They're all coming mikoyach the Baal ka'osu. They're all come from the husband. Isa lebal, isa lekulu. As long as the husband is there, they're all there, then they exist. Less lebal, less than lekulu. But once, if there is no husband there, then there is no shluchim over there. So therefore, the fact that one of them, a shaliach, dies has nothing to do. If Shimon died, the first shaliach, they're still all shluchim of the Baal. If the Baal will die, then no shluchas hab. He proving to them from the fact that if the Baal dies, they shluchas wouldn't be at all, meaning that they're all shluchim of the Baal. So it has nothing to do if Shimon died, the first shliach, they're still shluchim of the Baal. So v'hinei b'achronim chosvu, in the achronim they write shepluktas Rav Ashi umar bar Rav Ashi, the machloikis of Rav Ashi mar Rav Ashi, ika osu mekoyach shli rishon oy mekoyach habal, whether they come the other shluchim from the first shliach, he's the one that's sending them, or they're coming from the husband, he. So what's the machloikis? The mar bar Rav Ashi svira leida shliach hu kam shaliach atzmei. The mar bar Rav Ashi holds that the shliach becomes like the Mishalech himself. Or minimally, like the second level, at least, that what he does is considered like the Mishalech, that means the Shliach. So it turns out, that the first Shliach, each Shliach gets that when the first Shliach, Shimon, and all the following shluchim, ka'asu mikoyach habal hamishaleach, they are all coming from the power, with the power of the husband, the sender, because you are standing in the place of the mishaleach. So it's the mishaleach making you a shliach. Mash'enkein, that's mar bar Rav Ashi. So therefore, it's all continues to the Mishalech. The Mishalech is sending you, and you take his place. So you're always there taking the place of the Mishalech. There has to be the Mishalech over there. Mash'enkein, Rav Ashi Svirlei, Rav Ashi holds, you are not like the Mishalech himself. You're nothing, there's nothing, you don't become, you're not his, in his place, to be like him, to do what he needs to be his place. And also your action, it doesn't relate, it's not like the Mishalech is doing it. We don't need it, nothing to do with the Mishalech over here. We're only saying that when you do, helps for the Mishalech. But it's not the Mishalech. Hashliach Hasheni lo nase shliach mekoyach HaMishalech. So the second shliach did not become a shliach because of the sender, because it had nothing to do with the sender. Elo mikoyach shliach harisha. So the second, when Shimon makes Levi, let's say, a shliach, it's not Reuven making, because Shimon is not Reuven at all. Not Reuven, not himself, and not his action. He's not Reuven. So the shliach is Shimon, not Reuven. So when he makes Levi for a shliach, he's not a shliach from Reuven, from the Mishaleach, from the first one, but he's a shliach from the shliach, from Shimon, the second shliach. And therefore, Rav Ashi holds that if the shliach Rishon dies, there is nobody, he can't be a shliach anymore, because his whole shlichus came from the first shliach. So basically, they're trying to explain what powers is in the first shliach, in this case, in Shimon. Is Shimon like Reuven? So then we still have, Reuven is the one that counts, and Shimon doesn't really matter once he makes another shliach. Or Shimon never became Reuven. He only made a shaliach because Reuven made him. And if Reuven is not there to make him a shaliach, there's nothing to do. So even if the Mishalech, Reuven is available, is around, is alive, but he didn't become a shliach from Reuven because Shimon wasn't Reuven, and therefore, once Shimon dies and he's the one that made him a shliach, he cannot be a shliach. That's the way they want to explain it. But this needs to be looked into very much. Because Rav Ashi's language is that what my father said is as a child. He move on. That this idea of Rav Ashi is something which is totally negated in halacha. And that's actually the way it was ruled like Mar Barabashi, that the first shaliach can die and the shlichus still continues. But a view kama achronim, kama rayis, but the achronim brought a lot of evidence. Gam kitzad zeh v'shlichus. They brought that there is also, when we're discussing what shlichus is, shamaisa lo nechshav elo kasiyas hashliach, that the maisa is not counted. It doesn't become like the shaliach, not his action is not considered shaliach. So why would there be lahalocha that if the first shaliach dies, if then there is then there all the shlichus is still exists. If we're saying that the Rabbi Ashi's svara is because he Rabbi Ashi's svara is because he holds that he's not becoming a shliach. It's only his action that the Shimon needed to make, the first shliach needed to make, is the one that is making the other shliach. How could it be a shliach without Shimon? So that's the halacha, that he's not. But we know that this third logic, that he's only, the shliach is only making, he doesn't become like the shliach. So how could the other shliach be there if the shliach that made him a shliach, and he had to make them, because we brought proof, like the third way, there's a lot of achrein bring proof to that it's only then. So why would the halacha be that he could still continue being a shliach once Shimon dies? Who there's no one the one who made him the shliach, because we're saying it's only the asiyas hashliach, it's asiyas hashliach, it's not the mishalech. And here Shimon is the one that made him, and Shimon is no longer here. So that's why the Rebbe seems to say, the Gam Kan Shiktas Rav Ashi loy rak betam shemaisa shliach loy nechshav kasiyas hamishaleach. That also over here, the view of Ashi is not only that the maisa shaliach isn't considered like the mishaleach, and we need always the shaliach to be there, because it's not the mishaleach, because he's doing it on his own. That is not the reason why the shalichus would be bottled. It's only that he does helps for the mishalech, and that's why he would hold that if he dies, it can't be any more the shlichus. You say the mitzvah because it holds more than this. Since the entire of shlichus is only as it relates to the result of the action in the object that it's accomplished. That's why he holds a nachri. It's only what accomplishes in it. Ein tzorich liyis shum erech bein hashaliach v'hamishaleach. There needs to be no comparison between the shlich and the mishalech. It's all about just the accomplishment doing this action. Kloima. La'achrei shameshaleach asoi shliach. After the sender, after Reuven makes Shimon the shliach, shuv lo osi hashliach mekoyach hameshaleach. He is no longer coming from the power of the Meshaleach. Elokoyach hashlichus nimtza etzlei. He has the power of shlichus. He owns the shlichus. Uki'ilu hu habaylim al dover zeh. It's as if he becomes now the owner for that matter. Matam zeh svirlei. That's why he holds. She'im mei shliach rishon bat lukulo. If the first shliach dies, they're all bottled. Ki hashluchim lo osu mekoyach hamishaleach. The shluchim don't come from the power of the Mishaleach, elo mekoyach hashliach harishon. They come from the power. He has been given over the whole authority of the shlichus, and they all come from the first shliach. V'zehu ma she'omar Rav Ashi, the svara zu mufreches legamri. He said this is totally challenged. Hodabot de katnusi, my childish. Kikulu mekoyach man ka'osu mekoyach de bal ka'osu. Because who do they all come from? The husband, Klemer. Geder shlichus hu masha osi mekoyach ha-mishaleach. The definition of shliach is that they come from the power, mekoyach man, from the power of the mishaleach. The etzem toyar shliach pirushe shekoyach shal-mishaleach. You don't give away. It's not like a ball. The mishaleach gave away something to the shliach. You do with it. A shaliach is tied inherently to the mishaleach. The etzem ter shliach pirusha shu koyche shalom mishaleach. That means a shaliach that the mishaleach's power is there. Kulam koych man kos shlucha shlom kemeise, like him. V'lochein I ef shaliachas is inyan hashlichas lemishu. You cannot relate and say, well, somebody else. It all goes back to the original shliach rishon v'chulu. Say, oh, the shliach rishon, he gave me the koyach. The ball was in his hands, and he passed it along to me. No, mibli shabav v'nimshach mehabal hamshalech. Without bringing in the baal hamshalech, can be. Ba'af intim tzaleimar shemaisa hashlichas v'apila afula deminu hashlichas. Even if you're going to say that the act of shlichas and even the act of appointing a shlichas, nechshav ki'ilu aso hashliach, it's count. It's as if the shliach is doing it, not the baal. Now, like the third way, mikol mokem ein hu habaylim klal ala inyan the kulhu rak mekech the baal kos. He's not in charge. It's all coming from the power of the husband. Or Kenal Baruch as I said before. The shaliach is merely an intermediary over here. He doesn't have any of the powers.